Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I hope everybody is feeling good today. It's a good day, sunny day, and we are going to be starting our webinar. Agile and Adaptable, Students Today, Lawyers Tomorrow, the Science of Learning and the Art of Teaching series. Now, let me start by introducing myself. My name is Jason, and I'm a practicing lawyer in Mrs. Jason Teo and Partners. I was a student in help, and I'm happy to be back here today, although ideally physically, but what to do? We are at this stage of new norm. Let me first introduce Mr. Ravin Singh. Yes, Mr. Ravin is on my at the bottom right, handsome man over there, and Mr. Ravin is actually a founding partner of Mrs. Vin Partnership. He has been in active practice for more than a decade now. He was called to the Malaysian Bar as well as he's a barrister at law of the Honourable Society of Middle Temple. Rabin is very active in the Malaysian Bar. He was the past president of the Kuala Lumpur Bar Committee, and he continues to be an active member of the Malaysian Bar. He is in the Compendium Review Committee, National Legal Aid Committee, Personal Injury Claims Committee, as well as Yayasan Bantuan Guaman Steering Committee under the Malaysian Bar. He focuses on criminal and civil law practice. He's also a trainer for the Malaysian Bar in the area of criminal procedure and insurance. Uh, Rabin was the alumni ambassador for Help University from 2012 until 2018. So he's in a very good position to tell us all about his experience today. So on my upper right, of course, is Dr. Jaspal. Now, Dr. Jasper, I think everyone should know her if you don't know her already. Dr. Jaspal Sandhu Singh. She, an academic with the for predilection of treating the law as a living organism. Jaspal attempts to balance the interests of in both traditional and emerging areas of law. Jaspal specializes in law of information and communication technology law, IT, data governance and ethics, and media law, particularly free speech and expression. Having completed a PhD from Aberystwyth University in 2012 in the area of citizen journalism and social media, she has presented at numerous conferences regionally as well as internationally. Her current interest is in the area of online falsehoods, challenges, perambulating free speech and expression, and legal and ethical debates involving data governance, ethics, and AI. I was fortunate enough to be a student of Dr. Jaspal when I was in Help University, and I'm looking forward to listening to her today. Now, on the other speaker today is a very good friend of mine, my coursemate when I was in Help University, Mr. Darmin Segaran. He's on the left-hand side of the screen. Darmin has over a decade of legal practice experience in litigation and commercial advisory practice. Having practiced in Zico Law as well as Messrs. Shuklin and Bock, he has since gone on to run a practice of his own, which specializes in technology law, data privacy, ethics, especially in the context of emerging technologies. Nani, also a co-founder of the Data Ethics Society of Asia, DESA, a member of the International Movement for a Just World, and a member of the Malaysian Society for Labor and Social Security Law. As a visiting fellow at Help University Faculty of Law, he provides based training relating to the current practice of law. So there you have it, the three speakers lined up, and what an exciting what 90 minutes is this going to be. Let me just start off by introducing the topic a little bit. Agile and adaptable. So this is really about how students transition from students today to lawyers tomorrow. Can I now invite Ravin? Uh, Based on your observation, Ravin, how well do students transition from being a student to a practicing lawyer? what skills do they need to have for this smooth transition? Or if they already have the skills, what can they do to stand out? I mean, we are of course trying to pick your brain as a practitioner.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction, moderator. Are you able to hear me clearly? Okay.
Excellent.
So, what we after the covering our education in health, and most of us went on to complete our final year in England in various universities, and later some of us did the bar vocational course and then returned to Malaysia. Now, most of us are employers at this moment. We employ young lawyers and chambering students, and there are several telltale signs of the practices which many students got used to when they were in college, and which doesn't really quite apply in the working world. Now, when there are many things that happen when a student moves from being a student to a practicing lawyer, and these changes which need to be employed becomes very evident, especially during the pupillage or chambering period. Now, what we find is that a lot of pupils, when they start chambering, a lot of these, so to speak, habits of being a student becomes very obvious. Now, just an example of this is the spoon feeding, which some I believe educational institutions have, which actually to some extent does a disservice for pupils when they come into the working world. This doesn't happen anymore once you start working, especially as a young lawyer, as opposed to many other professions. One of the greatest demands that employers have is the ability to research on your own, to do work on your own. So instead of going into what are only the problems that you see with younger lawyers who come into the market, I will go into the qualities that are actually needed of these younger lawyers and I'll explain even where we see they do lack sometimes. Number one is the talent for advocacy. Not always you have pupils who have there was a prerequisite that they had to go through mooting, debating, conferencing when they were studying, and this becomes very evident because without the talent of advocacy, when you are thrown into the deep end when you start chambering, especially after your 3 months after your short call, you would be appearing before registrars and magistrates, and even in the High Court in chambers, depending on the employers, and you find that talent for advocacy is a great need, the ability to speak fluently in front of a authoritative figure, a judge, magistrate, conductor, and ability to put forward your point accurately in a way that makes it easy to understand. Because when you appear before judges and conductors, you don't have all the time to explain from A to Z the case. So you have to be able to zoom into what is necessary and articulate it in a way that is easily that they are able to grasp it easily. The next quality which we find is sometimes lacking is the ability to think on your feet. Now, only through practice, and when I say practice, I mean if you're going through conferencing classes where you're going through mooting, debating, negotiation, only through these practices is where you actually develop this ability to think on your feet. Now, this quality, why it's so important in chambering in practice, is because a lot of the times you'll be given instructions by your bosses or by your pupil master, and these instructions will obviously have to be read together with your entire file, your entire brief. After you have these two pieces of information, your instructions as well as the entire brief, you are then have to make a decision a lot of the times when you are before a judge on whether you can agree to something, not agree on something, and what can you do about. And if it's something that you're not able to get instructions on at that point, how do you handle the situation? This ability to think on your feet only comes after practice, and it's something that is very important. So I would encourage anyone who's now studying to make sure that you get exposed to such trainings where this quality can be strengthened. Working as a team, very, very important. I believe every student when they're at law school level should be at some point using an opportunity to work as a team as much as possible. Because when you start practice, aside from doing very minor cases, a lot of cases that you handle, especially in larger firms, you would be working with a team, dividing tasks, delegating. These are things which is absolutely necessary when handling larger briefs. Language. Language is something that we see a lot affect performance as well as reliability of young lawyers, because sometimes letters are issued when employers are out of the office, when masters are out of the office, and assistance is sought from pupils and young lawyers to draft basic letters, straightforward matters. Now, without I understand that not everybody English is a first language or Bahasa is a first language, but today we have a lot of software which assist. Which just give you an example like Grammarly, and there are many available software. So correcting grammar is one thing which you can get assistance on, but language is extremely important. So if it's not a strong point, practicing is the only way. Practice speaking it in a forum which is official, not just speaking with your friends. And that is one of the ways that helps you build the confidence with the language and delivery. The other qualities which is absolutely important is interpersonal skills and social skills. It's very important for this profession, because sometimes you can see negotiations of cases which are broken or made by the quality of the interpersonal skills of the person handling the matter. How you negotiate with your opponent, how you understand their position, then get them to understand your position or your client's position and your instructions. And that way, it actually sometimes makes negotiation a lot easier. So again, anytime that this is a available opportunity, students should grab that opportunity. Research, of course, goes without saying. Academic ability and research. Any law firm, no matter how small or how large, benefits from good research ability of their lawyers. So young lawyers coming to the market should not be saying that I checked Google. We actually had a case recently where I had a young lawyer call me for assistance and said that, could you tell me, besides Google, what else could I do? And of course, I was surprised, but something which is very, very important, research ability. Attention, I'm going to go into now the very basic ones, which only comes with training. Attention to detail, never let anything out of the office without checking properly. Make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's. Attention to detail is extremely important. We find so many cases where numbering goes out, pagination is affected, and this is nothing to do with legal ability. This is just attention to detail. And together with this, I would put their enthusiasm and initiative. Pupils must show their own initiative. If you want to be retained by a good firm, you must be able to show that you have initiative. It's not about just preparing a submission with every single piece of law which you can think of, but the initiative of diving further, going in depth, explaining your argument, and the ability to handle clients. This is very important. They're not always the bosses and the people masters will be there all the time. A lot of the times the bosses will let young lawyers take instructions from clients. So be able to focus your client, have the interpersonal skills to deal with a client, client conferencing. These are the qualities which we find sometimes are lacking and are in great demand in the legal profession.
It looks like, based on my own experience, certainly there is a gap, from the time you leave law school and before you actually practice, an interim period of being a pupil. And more often than not, we see a lot of people drop out, initially out when they can't take the pressure. And I think it is very important to have very good training from the beginning itself in year 1, year 2, continue to a CLP or bar school. So in that sense, Robin, I think the training that we get at our, at the early stage is an absolute must, because without a good foundation, we would just, at least for me, I would have crumbled. I would have be able to reach 10 years of practice. So I think in that sense, law schools have got an onerous task in ensuring that all these law students today really can transition well to be a practitioner tomorrow. And in that respect, perhaps we can move on to Dr. Jaspal. I would like to ask you, focus straight on the science of learning and the art of teaching, Dr. Jaspal, because as Rabin has very well elaborated. It is not easy to transition from a law student to a competent practitioner. So in that respect, Dr. Jasper, we have been hearing about this fourth industrial revolution. Can you let us know what is this all about, and what is this 21st century skill that many law schools, especially yours, in Help University, is advocating, and how does it future-proof our law students? Over to you, Dr. Jasper.
Thank you, Jason. I'm just wondering if you can hear me loudly and clearly.
Loud and clear.
Thank you. So thanks again for the very kind introduction, and Ravin for setting the tone today. And I want to record my sense of pride that I'm sharing this platform with all of you, my previous students and now my fellow peers, and who are very successful in their vocations. And of course, I will remiss in my duties if I don't acknowledge the presence of the participants who are making time away from their busy schedules to listen to us talk about something that's very fundamental. Um, I did have a number of slides that are available, and I'll put them up in due course. And perhaps I should do that now. Yes, I'm just wondering if you can see the slides.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So when I'm looking at law, I'm looking at law as a very broad liberal arts degree. Skills from a law degree helps our graduates in their profession or vocation of choice. And for many of our students, seeking a vocation outside the legal profession is a very viable option. So these skills that we are teaching our students must be transferable, and they must be adaptable to any environment. Now, when we speak of this agility and adaptability, this is essential as we are led by the aspirations of inculcating our students with the 21st century learner skills. And I'm just flagging up these skills for the participants, and also to ensure that our graduates are transitioning into a profession with all the necessary skills that they need for the fourth industrial revolution. Now, this revolution has got a number of driving forces. It is driven by new technology, fusing technology, disruptive technology. It is driven by new organizational logic. It's driven by new collaborative structures, and very interestingly, it's driven by this new knowledge worker. So with the focus on 21st century skills, which are required alongside the need to adapt to be a knowledge worker in the fourth industrial revolution, we feel that educational agenda setting is vital, and we need to align our attitudes towards education, particularly in the legal education, with these developments. And this is at the heart of the delivery of the education at our Faculty of Law and Government at Help University. Now, for us, transformation is nothing new. We began our transformation, I would say, if I could signpost you back to the year 2000, with the introduction of legal skills and legal practice as part of clinical legal education, which are practical modules delivered by professionals. And my learned panelist, Darmin, will tell you more about it. Now, one of the things that we are often asked is, what do we do in terms of traditional delivery of law school? Should we do away with this traditional delivery? Now, rigors of a law degree help to prepare our students for the rigor of the profession, as Ravin rightfully mentioned. So when we dilute standards and when we accommodate students, we take away so much from their learning process. We paralyze their learning and their experience of learning. So, for example, if I could refer to maybe playing interactive law games or board games, maybe even using augmented reality. Now, this may enhance or motivate or maybe inculcate an interest in the learning. But fortunately or unfortunately, education for the profession is not entertainment. Such activities may have a place to spark an interest, but it must move on to more advanced learning. So imagine a graduate who has been entertained, who has been cajoled through his degree, and he becomes part of a heap of potential employees or graduates. And he finds himself or herself at the bottom of this heap. As his peers, as he looks up at this heap, he realized that a number of them that are at the top of this heap have honed their skills in superior traits, such as running advocacy projects, publishing, writing, mooting, and being exposed to practical tools of the profession. And again, I want to signpost here and say, Darmain will expand on this. So to be a performing knowledge worker, what is essential is prior knowledge, in which lies the worker's expertise. So what and who develops this base knowledge and this prior knowledge in our students? This is done through us. This is done through a sophisticated law curriculum of substantive law papers, and these have been well thought out with proper outcome-based delivery and assessments. So lectures are important. This immersion in this type of knowledge must not be discounted. Seminars and workshops are important. Students collaborate, they enhance their learning, they enhance their knowledge, they get to speak, they get to articulate. Good quality and well thought out examination methods are vital. They give validity, they give integrity that must be maintained and of course continuously improved. I've been in this industry for 20 over years, and I can tell you there's been great shifts from how I used to do things 20 years ago and now. In terms of fundamentals that Robin was talking about, researching, and this is where assignment writing comes in, but we build on a number of new literacies, for example, digital literacies, not leaving behind some traditional technologies, such as relying on the good old library, but also using online legal databases like Westlaw and LexisNexis to do research in a matter of minutes. So articulating, honing the vocabulary, honing the research skills, using traditional methods, modern methods, being precise with what you're writing, supported by authorities, this is important. But this cannot be all there is to legal education to prepare for the profession. So what has changed to ensure that we are preparing our students adequately? And what more have we done and that we must continue to strive to do? So aside from traditional elements, we have integrated a number of activities as assessment methods to ensure students are quality learners, and also the ability for students to create their own space and ecosystem. Now, owing to the shortness of time, I want to focus on students as producers. So this is where we are moving away from the traditional way of, teaching law by focusing on examinations and assignments, but we are now supporting these methods with projects as well as academic related activities. So we have moved from abundance of assessments through examinations, which only produce a cognitive surplus and overload, so that projects that place the students as producers build a kind of intrinsic motivation. Students are more inquisitive. This is what I've found. This is what my colleagues have found. They are inquiring, they are excited because they don't have to sit and write an exam. They don't have to be in the classroom. And I will discuss this further. So learners must be invested in their learning. So in terms of agility and adaptability, the right attitude is important. And this is how we start to build the right attitude. They must be part of their own learning communities and ecosystems. So I want to share with you today 6 parts of our action plan in directing our students to be producers, but also to be agile and adaptable. So the first is, of course, individualized learning and also thinking. We want to inculcate this. From prior knowledge, we want students to be able to add to new knowledge that they are going to find for themselves. We provide the scaffolding, and this is a very important teaching tool to provide scaffolding to the students so that they are responsible for their own learning. We give them some basis, some background, but essentially they're developing their own literacies. There is no spoon feeding. For example, we introduce problem-based learning. So my colleague, Wilma, who teaches company law, has introduced report writing in terms of, company boardroom directors meetings, making decisions at such meetings, and putting to real terms the importance of statutory provisions in board meetings and directors' duties and decision-making abilities. My colleague Kathleen, for example, has invited students to do a challenge-based learning project where the students decide that they are going to research on a particular area. They are going to define the remit of this area. They're going to raise their own research questions and they're going to answer them. Secondly, there is really a high premium, and Robin has talked about this already, in terms of interpersonal skills and soft skills in the face of, particularly now with automation and artificial intelligence and the use of legal tech. How does one student differentiate themselves from the next? And this is where I think this premium on interpersonal skills and soft skills is vital. And how do we do this? We have presentation projects. Students have to come in front, they have to present. They do experiential learning by observation, by going for court visits, and also delivering lectures to their peers, to peer teaching. Students are required to work in teams. They're required to collaborate, organize themselves, organize their time, set deadlines, and complete the tasks. Thirdly, we feel that students need an expanded view of the world. We live in a globalized world. Jason, for example, who's been very humble in his profile and his introduction, he does a lot of cross-jurisdiction work in different parts of the world. And I believe he's on the who of some list. So he can share that with you later. But essentially, we want students to have an expanded view of the world and that their lenses are not blinkered to the set or number of modules that we have prescribed in their curriculum to ensure they obtain a qualifying law degree. There are infinite areas of the law that demonstrate that the law is a living organism. It is growing, it's thriving, it's demanding change, greater progress, and greater civility. And how do we do this? Well, we have a novel conference that we introduced a number of years ago. So we have student conferences. Students are encouraged to organize these conferences and present papers at student conferences. And some of our students who have been so confident at presenting papers at our conferences have gone on to present papers in student conferences in the UK. Fourthly, we want to develop student leadership. So student-led activities develop ownership and leadership. They've demonstrated, our students have the willingness to take this initiative and show commitment. For example, just this week, I had a young student approach me to say she wants to initiate a club, an activity. And in a matter of hours, she had already articulated and drafted a Google form to gather views and support from her classmates and her cohort mates. So this is what we call a student leader. I should be very embarrassed if I said her name out here today, but she knows who she is. So in terms of student conferences, we have also encouraged students to be on the editorial board. We have our own student law journal, but there are a number of student law journals here in Malaysia. So we want to hone the skills of, them initiating their own, be their own leaders and the leaders of their community. And some of my colleagues are directing our students to do this. Now, the fifth point is we mustn't lose sight of what Ravin has said. The identity of reading law is to become a professional so the identity as a professional and a knowledge worker is essential. So we must maintain the rigors and integrity of the degree. And it's very interesting, he talked about a young lawyer in his firm, or is it a pupil, if I'm not mistaken, who Googled. And I think this is the problem that we need to surmount. So at a time when we are dealing with the generation who relies on instant information, this reliance on shiny and unofficial knowledge must be set aside. So again, the focus is to uppermost in our minds is our standards. So while anecdotal research may be important to understand something that is new, novel, but however, we must be able to ring fence authorities. We must be able to ring fence things that, yes, you can look at Google, but at the end of the day, what you produce must be authoritative. And if we were to do any lesser, and if we were to demand any lesser of our students, I think that we are going to take away the ability for them to self-actualize and self-identify themselves as that professional and as that knowledge worker. And so some of the things that we've done at the law school is to introduce a law skills series. And me and my colleagues, we've come together and we've introduced this series. And what we do is we tool our students, we skill our students to research, to read, to write at a very high standard. Last but not least, this may be quite surprising to a number of people listening out there today, is that we want to produce a contemplative student. Aside from being able to analyze, critique, and hold discourse around the law, we believe that law students must go beyond these traditional insistent menu of skills, limiting the role of the lawyer as simply a solution provider to problems. I think the contemplative student must be reflective. He must reflect on his or her place in society. And legal training prides itself with instilling the young student to strive for these higher ideals in society. The thinking lawyer must reflect on his or her professional growth and be able to build coping mechanisms to deal with the challenges of the profession. So here, a colleague of mine, a very young colleague of mine, and I have introduced reflective practice. Now, this is not one of the best qualities of law students. They find it a struggle to reflect. So while students were a bit reticent about the assessment method, they, at the end of the day, ended up being very introspective and reflective. And this added to their growth process. And they soon came to around to appreciating the skill. So we did this through court visit projects, and one of my colleagues, Sophia, did this through an administrative law project. I can talk to you a little bit. I know I'm running short of time, but I can talk to you a little bit about the court visit project because it's interesting. The students were able to reflect on the project as a valuable exposure in their lived experience as a student. And they recorded how grateful they were for the opportunity. Now, this is surprising. We never hear such recording of sentiments such as, I'm grateful I got to do this. They were forced to reflect on their observations of life as a lawyer, which got them to inquire on the challenges that they will face one day as a professional. And intrinsically, the challenges they will face in relation to the qualities that they lack or they have to aspire to. And this gave them an opportunity to reflect on how they can turn their weaknesses into strengths. Now, they also reflected on how how they surprised themselves by the opportunities of learning through observation in court or just observing lawyers and the management and the day-to-day running of administration or justice in the courts. Now, this will lead, I'm sure, to future reflection. I'm sure that in years to come, they will recollect their experience and they will measure the inroads that they have charted in their careers and their personal and professional growth. Knowledge is not only obtained in our law school, it is applied, it is transmitted, and it's produced. Students not only graduate from us, they create successes for themselves, they embrace opportunities, and they meet expectations. And we like to think we have provided them with the stepping stones for doing this. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jasper. I really like, the terms contemplative law student, reflective practice, all these, it is not easy to be a law lecturer in Help University, definitely. And I'm actually very happy every time when I'm in court, I get to bump into Help students. And we always have a good, be it as an adversary or otherwise, it's always nice to catch up. And even in I see Ravin, taking the lead most of the Malaysian bar and KL bar activities. And of all places, Dr. Jasper, do you remember when I was in Seoul, Korea, when
Yes.
I was attending to my client in Korea, and you, lo and behold, you were there presenting your presentation in
Yes.
IBA Seoul, I believe.
Yes,
So
that's
what
right.
I'm
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is along the way, Help University must have done something right because at every nook and corner of the world that I'm in, or at least, I see everybody there and everybody's doing well. Now that brings me to
Absolutely.
the next topic. What is the secret behind all this? There must be something in a Help University law program, in bridging in translating legal skill into legal practice. And I understand that Darmain, you are one of them in Help University, who's taking the lead, taking the charge together with your other fellow lecturers in Help. Can you let us know how, in the context of agility and adaptability as a law teacher as well as a practitioner. What do you bring to the table? Over to you,
So,
Dan.
thanks, Jason. Audio and video okay? Jason, have you muted yourself? Okay. All right. So what is brought to the table, I think, in this module, it's a little bit different from what the other subjects do now. As Jaspal has mentioned already, the other subjects, the substantive subjects, already have introduced elements of
You seem to be having a, I think, some internet issue, but no worries. Just give it a second. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Jason, I can hear you.
Okay.
But I think
Let us just give Darmain a minute or so. I think there's a glitch in the system. Just yeah. So Darmain was talking about how what Help University is bringing to the table. In particular, his work, his experience with students. Yeah. Before we got cut off, let me try to reach him, and we will be back very soon. So anyway, as we were talking about adaptability and agility, I remember when I was a student in Help University, I looked forward to a legal skill and legal practice session because it was one of those rare sessions where we can actually learn in detail how to use LexisNexis research tools as well as mooting, which I enjoy very much. Um, Fun fact, after when I was in my fifth or seventh, in my seventh year of practice, I actually had a short stint in Help University as a legal practice lecturer, a part-time legal practice lecturer. And from there, I actually had a lot of good time because I can now put myself in the position of a lecturer and impart legal skill and legal knowledge. From there, I realized that it is very important for students to have this module because like Ravin said earlier, sometimes the interview process may not be efficient enough to filter through candidates that we ideally would like. But it all shows very fast within the first 2 weeks of your pupillage. And it is at that point where we are able to distinguish between what Dr. Jaspal is now, a contemplative and a reflective student, and they can demonstrate the type of skills that they have learned. Darmin is back. So Darmin, just now, just right before we got cut off, you were talking about what you bring to the table as a law lecturer in help. Perhaps I hand it back to you over to you.
Thanks so much. Noting in the interest of time, I'm just going to jump into the two modules straight away. Okay, so the two modules are very practical modules, and what we're looking at actually is application, direct application from legal practice into what students are learning right there and then, a contract law, tort, and any of the other subjects that they're actually looking at. So in this first subject, which is legal skills. This is done in year one. The way that year one has been designed is actually to look at the breadth of information that they receive. So they start off by learning the fundamentals, which Ravin mentioned was actually the most important part of it, which is research skills. And we spend a bit of time on looking at all the different types of research skills, including your online learning, as well as your going to your library. In the event of a failure of entire systems, how would you go to the library and carry out research in a law firm? And then the student is taken through a process of meeting a client, managing the client, handling that client's particular case, all the way through to the final point of actually submitting their case in court. So that's why you have in their first module over there, you see client counseling, what you do when you actually meet and greet a client, how do you take notes during those sessions, what should you be looking out for in terms of red flags. Then when a client's case actually comes and sits on your lap, how do you actually manage that file? accounting for that file. And then legal writing takes you through the process of drafting letters, letters of demand, any kind of correspondence with lawyers, looking at your target audience, the style of writing. And students are actually given the opportunity to draft letters in their own style. Negotiation, again, is a practical subject where students interact among themselves. They play the role of a lawyer and are given actual live scenarios where they need to negotiate for an outcome while taking on hidden information that might be present in the case, which is very much the situation when you do it in real life. Now, legal drafting goes on to explore drafting of court documents, statements of claim, defenses, and within that, moving on to advocacy, you actually look at the full suite of things you need to do in advocacy, meaning you draft the submissions, you do bundles of authorities, you present them to court, and then you have that portion where you actually stand up and submit before a judge. And all of them follow the rules of court that exist at that point of time. So in this sense, we've noticed that there are actually times where systems change. For example, during the COVID-19 lockdown, we actually had court sessions which were done online. So we actually replicate that during advocacy sessions. Now, I'll touch a bit more on professional conduct and ethics in a bit. But in year 2, what we actually do is we move into depth rather than breadth. You actually look into topics, so you notice there are far less topics of coverage: opinion writing, legal drafting, advocacy. And what we actually do is we take a specific area. If you notice a civil procedure, we actually look at a personal injury claim, and then we go in depth into personal injury. They look at drafting affidavits and then submitting in different forms of applications. For example, a summary judgment application. And this follows, again, my colleague
Jason, can you turn on your mic, please?
It would appear that the internet is not very stable, and I think we will have to wait for Darmain to be back. But so far, what Darmain has actually presented is rather impressive. Like looking at the topics that is being taught to the law students in year 1 and year 2. I would say this is on par, if not, I don't know how deep they go, but it is on par with at least this CLP syllabus, and some aspect of the bar vocational course is in there as well.
Yes, if I can just add, Jason, I think a lot of what, because the legal skills and legal practice syllabus was formulated in such a way as to, in a sense, as you said, emulate the BVC then. And so this is where you could see that a lot of our students are interested in applying for internships, whether it is after A-levels, year 1, year 2. And so this will give them a little bit of a strength to stand on, and it gives them a chance to actually build their portfolio. So again, I'm terrible at describing this, but again, when you look at a heap of potential applicants that you or Ravin may get, and I mean, you're certainly going to discern between this heap, and it's quite difficult for someone in year 1 or year 2. So to sort of say, like, I've done all of these things. I've attended lectures, I've attended tutorials. What can they say in terms of earning brownie points to sort of lift themselves up? So that was the whole idea of legal skills and legal practices, trying to balance between importance of substantive law and also practicalizing that substantive law. I saw Darmin peep up and then he disappeared again. So for example, like in year 2 for legal practice, one of our lecturers who's a practicing professional, Deborah, what she does is, since they are doing tort law in year 2, so they are given a chance to practicalize that knowledge in terms of being to deal with, say, a personal injury brief. So where they will have to, come up with submissions in terms of an appeal. They will even at the early stages, they will have to draft claim, a statement of claim, and even a statement of defense.
I had in the 1 year, at the 1 year plus, I was lecturing in health on a part-time basis when I was leading the module for legal practice. And what happened was we actually have a live simulation of injunction application. And lo and behold, when they went off to the UK to do their bar vocational course, they actually texted me and say, Mr. Jason, guess what? The exact question you gave us came out for our assessment in BPTC. And it's like, oh, and we knew the cases offhand, and we were able to somehow, benefited from from the course.
Absolutely.
I was very happy with that.
Yeah.
Darmin is back.
As I do apologize, it's
Uh,
something I can't control. The system is just crashing Microsoft Teams. Not to waste any more time to the participants, there are two things I just want to highlight in terms of, we're talking about agility and adaptability. This course evolves. It's been around for 2 decades. As Jaspal mentioned, it evolves over time. And we are going to keep changing modules to keep up with the trends. And the two new things that we're looking at right now is legal tech. That's one of the large components that we're building on. This is up and coming in the United Kingdom. It hasn't really reached Asia, and this is technology in law. And what we're looking is integration of things like artificial intelligence, natural language processing, contracts that are being drafted by systems rather than lawyers. And rather than fight systems like this, which some countries are doing, what we're doing is we're trying to embrace it and give students a head start by teaching them how these systems are being incorporated in the US, in the UK, and the rest of Europe. Now, we are in the process of teaching them things like this. What I tend to do is also give them insight into new roles that might be taken up. The term lawyer has become very generic. What we do as lawyers is very different. Right now, in some of the big 4 consultancy firms, you've got titles like legal project manager, specialists in specific areas of law, data privacy specialists. And these are very sought after titles, and you need a background in law, and you also need an understanding of the technology that's coming along with it. Now, to build students up to this, you can't just take them and plonk them in something as technical as AI systems and NLP. What we do here is we try and give them a brief taste of what project management tools are like. Introduction of things like Trello, Slack, that project management companies use that should be used by law firms, and bring them into that understanding of it. Now, on top of that, we try and introduce them to the bare bones, the basics of developing legal technology for themselves. And we do that by incorporating something that's known as a chatbot, automation of a process that can be done by a system rather than a lawyer. And what we're going to see is, in the future, certain types of work of a lawyer is going to be automated. And we can't really run from this. So we'd rather prepare students for an eventuality that's coming. Now, again, we're not preparing students for life here in Malaysia. We're looking at international students. We're looking at, as Jason mentioned, he's interacting with clients in Korea, all over the world. And the rest of the world is moving in this direction. Your corporations are expecting lawyers to move faster because technology is available. So we're moving students to understand how these systems work and incorporate it into their studies in a practical system. The second area that we're looking at expanding is taking on from the bar, and I think Ravin would know a lot about this. There have been large numbers of complaints against lawyers in many countries in terms of ethics. And many of them don't have to do necessarily with a malicious intent, but rather not understanding the rules of ethics at its basic level. So from year 1 onwards, we're trying to get students to understand theories of ethics, understanding analysis, and placing them in situations where ethics is not black and white. It's straddling on the gray area. What do you do in a practical situation when you're faced with a difficult choice, a difficult ethical choice? And the reason for this actually comes back to what both Jaspal and Ravin were talking about, the consequence of what you are going to be doing. When you step out as a lawyer, you become responsible for clients' monies, their lives, impact on their families, corporations. You are advising on all these things. And it can't be a situation where you are just giving basic advice. You're giving something that you're not too sure about, something where the ethical standards are not in question. So we are training students here to answer difficult questions like this rather than starting at year one of practice, not knowing head or tail about what's going on and trying to find your way in the mess, in the maze. Many students have come back to us 2 or 3 years on into practice and told us very clearly that some of the things that they've learned in these particular modules, legal practice and legal skills, have had a direct impact on them being far ahead of their peers. When they open a file, to them, it's just another day at the office, rather than trying to figure out the difference between what a statement of claim is and a statement of defense. So as time evolves, what we're going to see is this course evolving to meet the current demands of the system. So with that, I understand I might have skipped over some time. Jason, I hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, Dami. Richard Susskind. I enjoy reading his book, and I think one of the aspects that you've been talking about the evolution of legal practice and how roles of lawyer may change, not necessarily eliminated, because I always believe that there's a certain aspect of advocacy and the intuitive feeling can never be replaced. But yes, you are right. We have to be ready for it, and Susskind has been advocating for this, and
Absolutely, yeah.
it's something that is very important, and I'm glad that Help University has taken the lead in putting emphasis on this aspect. Anyway, we have taken a full circle, and now I want to move back towards Ravin, who to tap on his experience as a practitioner. There's this saying: give a man a fish, and he will eat for a day. And if you teach him how to fish, he will eat for a lifetime. So, I mean, what I'm trying to get at is like no matter how prepared a student can be from a learning institution, at the end of the day, there must be something within that student to excel and differentiate himself. What's your take on this, Ravin?
Hello.
Yeah.
The one thing that pupils must understand is that there are many qualities of a lawyer that does not change despite a change in landscape. So there was time before COVID, and there is a time that we're in now after COVID. So a lot of the things that we did, maybe even to, if I dare say, took for granted before, things have changed after. So, for example, there was a time when we would do oral submissions at the end of the case, which today there hardly are oral submissions in the lower court, mainly only in the high court onwards. There was a time when we used to appear before the registrars in their chambers, and it's something we don't do. We have not done since the MCO. And with this changing landscape, we have to understand that there are certain things that just don't change. And no matter how the landscape changes, there are certain qualities which cannot change. An example of this is having the right attitude in practice. You must understand that the legal profession is a profession. It's not just a job. You can't think of it as a 9 to 5 job. It is something which to a large extent becomes you. And the right attitude, the right mindset, the ability to think and work, these are things which, no matter how the landscape changes, it remains constant. Another thing which I like what Jason what example you used earlier was when Dharmesh spoke about ethics. Ethics is a huge issue. In Malaysia, we have a significant number of lawyers who have either been disciplined by the disciplinary board or to a large extent even struck off the bar. And yes, a lot of them may have innocently gotten themselves into trouble. And an example of this is the client's account. It's the use of the solicitor's client's account, the client's account checkbook. These things don't change. This is ethics which is to be inbuilt at an early stage in practice.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad to see that is something that we are looking at seriously in Malaysia. The help module on ethics is absolutely necessary. Someone needs to, lawyers at a very young age, even before practice, needs to understand what is client money, what is standards that they need to be adopted, as well as what is an ethical breach. I can give many examples. I won't take too much time. This is a very simple example. If you act for a client in one case, and if the client decides to hire you or decides to call you as a witness in another case, based on what you did in the first, can you do that? And of course, the answer is it really depends on the situation. But there are many lawyers who won't think twice. Oh yeah, okay, my case is over, I can do it. But no, it's not so clear cut. And of course, then the financial aspect using the client's account, that one is very clear. Other thing that doesn't change is the employers do not look at hiring young lawyers solely for the purposes of giving instruction. We pride ourselves in our firm that whenever we decide a course of action on a file, we always have a discussion. And this is right from the partner of the firm to the newest lawyer. We will sit down and we will say, okay, so what do you think we should do? And nothing can be more demoralizing if someone says, I don't know, or, well, boss, why don't you tell me what to do? No, that's not how practice is like, and that's not what practice is like, and that's not how most firms, decent firms look. That's not what they look for. They want discourse. They want lawyers who would say, okay, I've looked up this issue, I've looked up that fact, and this is what I think we should do. And that discourse inevitably sometimes leads to a better strategy in a matter. It shows employers that you are thinking. It shows employers that you have a genuine interest in handling in the file that you are handling, and not just pulling the 9 to 5 or being a clock watcher. So these skills, these negotiation skills, are absolutely necessary, and the conferencing skills of being able to discuss and discuss is absolutely necessary. I also think something which Jaspal pointed out was Dr. Jaspal pointed out. I'm still calling him Jaspal. Dr. Jaspal pointed out was the scaffolding. I really like the term scaffolding. This module, which I've had the opportunity of going through, is almost all encompassing. It is so much similar to what foreign law students are getting. Your students are getting this from the BBC, and here it's available now. And this idea that you are being taught research skills, ability to use different platforms, the ability to handle file management. I mean, this is a quality that you need no matter what happens to the landscape. File management for a law firm, and even Jason, you pointed out, it's extremely important, because being able to manage your court diaries, being able to document client documents properly, preparing your bundles, getting ready for trial, being able to refer back at a lightning speed is all qualities which comes about from file management. And I'm extremely excited to see that this is something that is being offered here by a local university at the degree level. It's absolutely necessary.
Yeah. That's yeah. Thank you very much, Ravin. And I think certainly the participants today have a lot to digest. But now we are opening up the opportunity for them to ask any questions. I'm going to open up the floor. Those who have got any questions, you can type in your question at the meeting chat, and I will direct the questions to the panelists today. If you want to direct your question to a particular panelist, you can do so, like Mr. Ravin or Mr. Darmin or Dr. Jaspal. Can you let me know? Blah, 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 blah. After we do that, we will circle back to the participant for their final comments on the issue today. So can we now open the floor to the participants? If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to type in at the meeting chat, and I will try to direct the questions to the appropriate panelists we have here today. In the meantime, while we are waiting, I think this is Darmin, you were mentioning about COVID-19 and how the legal landscape has changed, and Ravin as well has talked about that. And we certainly we were not prepared to tell you the truth, and everybody was running around like a headless chicken. And when it comes, so my question is, the curriculum in help right now with respect to legal skill, legal practice. What do you do to keep it up to date? Do you incorporate new modules or as the law changes? Because as we know, law is not stagnant. Law evolves. What do you do? For example, let's take an immediate example, COVID-19 situation. How would the legal practice and legal skill module change after this?
So I think one of the big things that happened was the immediate sort of shutdown of your ability to go to court. And as Ravin was saying, oral advocacy. And as it was, oral advocacy was on a sort of a downward trend at the lower courts, not being used too much. And this is something that immediately we picked up on students, because students were on lockdown in either their hometowns, wherever it was. And they adapted by us changing the assessment formats. And they actually had a number of them depending on a situation. It was either, for example, oral advocacy was changed completely to wholly written submissions, submitted online, so no physical copies. So your bundles of authorities and your submission was done completely online. And it was not just straightforward documents. It was documents with hyperlinking, which is something that you would not usually do just by submitting online. Then it's evolved further for newer batches to actually do oral advocacy online via virtual systems. Now, this is something that lawyers are doing right now. And I'm proud to say that many of the students did a wonderful job, actually, both in terms of their negotiation assessments, because you have 4 people sitting in a room trying to have this conversation, and they had basically the rules of etiquette in an online space. There no speaking over each other, turning off your mics. What happens when someone like myself today crashed? How do you deal with it? So all of these they're picking up on all these skills, ready for situations.
Right. So that's really good. That's really interesting to hear. Like you guys are so up to date with your e-filing within the health environment, with the hyperlink and all that. I mean, that's really, really good to hear. We have one question. It is directed to Mr. Ravin. The question is, other than internships that we can do at this stage of our degree, are there anything that you suggest that we do, I suppose, in the context of differentiating the student? Ravin, are there anything that they can do apart from doing mini pupillages, internships at law firms?
Absolutely. Yes, it is the most common practice that a student would undertake an internship at a law firm. There are, of course, many benefits. There are sometimes shortcomings because people who join internship programs don't normally question in detail what really will they be handling. I've heard of situations where the young lawyers, done with research, which is good. But there's also been lawyers, intern students who have been photosetting throughout the day, or handling menial labor in the office, which I don't think would benefit a law student that much. Other than internships, well, law students have an opportunity of shadowing. You can actually look for opportunities where you can shadow judges. You can you can write in and try that. That I understand would be difficult to get, but if you get that opportunity, great. The other thing which I would definitely recommend is hone in on your skills. If language is not a strong point for yourself, or if speed reading isn't a quality that you have, advocacy or your oratory skills are not that good, then use the time, attend seminars, learn, attend workshops. Especially today, I mean, Elon Musk loves to say this about how if you want to learn anything, it's available on the internet, available for free. But I've noticed, especially post-COVID, there are amazing numbers of seminars online which you can register for, where you can learn new skills, which is very necessary. Other than just attending seminars, I would recommend that pupils perhaps try to volunteer at the Legal Aid Center. Volunteering in the Legal Aid Center, one, besides being a very it develops a lot of humility. You also understand that a lot of times what lawyers see and what the clients go through may be something different, and that is something I would definitely recommend. Other than that, sometimes I would say that even if you're on holiday and if you have time on your hands and you have the normal 12 subjects or 16 subjects that you do as a law student, use that time and look at other areas of law that is not being offered by the university. I know friends who have had to study European law on their own because they wanted to do the DVC at a time when European law wasn't offered here, and they ended up doing very well for the subject which they actually never went to class for. because they learn it on their own. So if there's an area of law which is not being offered by your university, you don't have to say that, oh, well, it's not offered, so I have to wait for practice. You can actually start using this time now and learning new areas of law on your own. Read up about it, and so when you come on into practice, you have this opportunity to say, listen, I read up this area of law and I'm interested in this new area. Something else which I would definitely recommend people doing is sorry, it escapes me now, but yes. So these are the areas. These are other opportunities which I think people can use, other than just going for internship.
Yeah. If I may just add on a little bit, I think nowadays there are legal blogs online, and it's a wonderful opportunity for students to approach this legal blog, owner to offer to submit some of these articles that they have, because I do know some of them who will vet through the articles before they publish it, and I think that's a beautiful opportunity for students to actually get dip their feet into this area of publishing the, articles. Of course, care must be given so as to accurate research and no defamatory elements. But it is a good start to do that. Yeah, and we have another question. Oh,
Jason,
sorry.
sorry,
Yeah.
Jason. Just add two small points. Sorry, if I should have written it down earlier. Court. Young lawyers or young people, students need to understand that courts are actually open to the public. And if you want to see what court is like, go to the Palace of Justice, go to the Kuala Lumpur High Court, sit in the trial, sit in those which are not closed to the public, and watch trials and see what skills do other advocates have. And lastly, join clubs, join things like Toastmasters, Road Track, and things like this, where you meet more people, you develop a ability to speak, and also with Toastmasters example, you have this platform where you get to test your skills. So yeah, those are the two I wanted to add. Thank you, Jason.
We have two more questions. I think I can combine these two questions. Essentially, they are again about internship. I will direct this question to Darmain after this, since you're running your own practice as well. So, in essence, the question: is there a chance in the current situation for internships at law firms? And the related question is, how do we apply to this internship? Because is it the usual thing that this application need at least 3 to 6 months? Do they need to put in an application 3 to 6 months in advance? Perhaps, Damin, you want to tackle this question?
Yep. I think that you have to recognize that situations have changed, but work has not stopped. Companies are still operating, law firms are still operating, and what we need to do is take the chance. There are certain firms that require 3 to 6 months in advance of application, but there are many of them that will just look at your form and the next day say, join us. And what does that mean? Addressing that first question, do you have a chance in this current situation? If it's not possible for them to take you on physically, I think that many are actually changing their stance to have you on virtually, meaning virtual meetings you're joining in. You are actually doing more research work than actually possibly shadowing, like what Ravin's talking about. And all this is in the interim. You know, the trend currently is a stopgap measure. We're heading towards opening of new facilities, and there's going to be a point of time where you are going to be going into a firm. So I'd say don't hold back, apply and see what the response is, and don't be dejected when you get a no from one firm. I know people who have applied, and this is in the UK, for 500 positions before they were offered one. 500. So, being rejected by 10, 15, keep at it.
Thanks, Darmin. Yeah, I came across virtual interns as well in LinkedIn. These are offered by Magic Circle firms, I believe. A week, 1 week of virtual interning, and I think that let's put it this way: my firm is operating, because of the COVID half and half situation. Half of us are in the office, half of us are working at home, and that is going to be how things are going to run. So, like Darmin say, work is not going to stop. We still need to have our lawyers, and we are happy to have interns to assist us. And with respect to the 3 to 6 months, it's really about doing your homework, because some firms have a structured internship program, whereas there are other firms where they are happy to take you on an ad hoc basis. But that too, having said that, it depends on your school term as well as your holiday. So perhaps researching on the law firms that you want to have an internship at would help. In the interest of time, let me now circle back to Dr. Jaspal before we take any final question after this, if there are any. Do you have any final thoughts on what we have, we have heard a lot. Is there any way you want to summarize or any final thoughts from you, Dr. Jasper?
I think the whole discussion today can, in terms of how agile and adaptable a student wants to be, is very much dependent on the student's attitude. I think the student has to plan and design what they want to get out of law school. And I think once they sort of align what they want to get out of law school with what the profession expects and what the workplace expects, and they sort of, synchronize this, this design with what is required in the marketplace, I think that in that sense, they're taking the first step. So there must be commitment. So some of the issues that we have when discussing commitment is, what do students want? They themselves are not sure. And this is a word of, it is a friendly advice. My advice is sometimes law school is not about knowing exactly what you want when you're getting into it. Sometimes what is expected of you sort of appears before you. It sort of grows on you, and then it becomes quite, it happens in a very organic way. So my basic advice is get to know more people, network, attend webinars like this, and there are so many right now. Take advantage, turn challenges into opportunities. So just as Ravin was saying, okay, if you can't get internship, do something else. There's a multitude of things that you can do, but the underlying premise is having the right attitude.
Thank you, Dr. Jasper. Anything to add, Ravin or Darmin? If not, do you have anything else to add, Ravin? Any concluding thoughts?
I think for young lawyers, they have to understand that first, you have to be agile when you talk about the legal profession. A lot of people are worried that with the advent of the whole artificial intelligence, will we become irrelevant? What happens is, since example like Sarawak was exploring the possibility of using artificial intelligence to assist judges in making decisions. Yes, times will change. Times will change. Things will change. Processes will change. But the core value of most lawyers will not change. In fact, of all lawyers, should not change. So my parting with, if I just can tie this to the last question about the internship, for example, when you apply for internship, how do you apply? Do you research the firm before you apply there? Do you look at matters that this firm has handled before? And then see, okay, these lawyers are interested, for example, in criminal law. Is that something that I am interested in? Am I interested in criminal law? And if that's the case, then my internship proposal or my application should state that I have a keen interest in criminal law, and these are the areas which I'm familiar with, and this is what I'm willing to work on. So being a master or being a employee who has taken an intern, I have the benefit of saying, oh, this person really is showing a lot of interest in this. This person has done their homework. That grit, that core value that I'll take that one step is something that cannot change, no matter how the landscape changes. So my parting words to any of the people or any of those who are watching today is that understand that there's always going to be a need for lawyers. Your grit, your dedication, your determination is what is most important.
Thank you very much, Ravin. Darmin, any final thoughts? Or?
Quick one. Very often students get very scared either before coming into law school or coming into their first year because of that grit that Ravin's talking about, because they see lawyers, how they practice and how difficult it is, and they get an impression that it's tremendous work. And the truth is, I think it is very difficult work, and there's a reason for it. But at the same time, I think don't second guess your own resilience. Over time, you will find that you will be molded by this system, and if you get into a right system, the correct system, all that develops your character and molds you over time and prepares you for what's out there. And so give yourself a chance.
Yeah, if I may, Dr. Jaswal and the gentlemen, apart from the seriousness of legal profession, and the practice and all that, let me just say that first you have to choose the right school. That's very important to have the right environment, to have the right care given to you. But at the end of the day, you got to enjoy yourself because I had the best time of my life when I was in law school, and I still look at it very fondly. I would not change it for anything. And at the end of the day, things happen for a reason. When you even your area of practice, you will fall into it accidentally. I set out to want to be the greatest defender of criminal justice system, but I ended up doing a totally entirely different area of law. And this is the best part. I was in health for A levels. I was very interested in economics. In fact, I was deciding between economics and law. I decided to go for law, and I enjoyed myself a lot. Best years of my life. And now I'm in an area of law of international trade and doing anti-dumping, which combines both economics and the law. So sometimes you don't know where life will take you. Just enjoy the ride. Be cautious, but have fun. And I don't think we have any more questions. And also, we are running out of time. So
Yeah.
I would like to thank Ravin for taking your busy schedule out, and Darmain, who's actually joining us, or travel all the way to Ipoh, but he's still joining us here today. And of course, to our Dr. Jaspal. And thank you everyone for attending this webinar. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as we did. I certainly enjoyed myself a lot. So I will see you next time in the next webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, Greg's back. Thanks a lot, and a big shout
Oh,
out to our distinguished speakers, Mr. Damin, Mr. Ravin, Dr. Jaspal, and our moderator, Mr. Jason Teo, for your input and for bringing the session to life. Jason, thanks for the publicity on Help University. Right. We also like to thank our valued attendees for your presence in our topics this afternoon.